Hi everyone, it's Bina 007 back for a 10-minute movie review of three films. Let's begin with It Ends With Us, which is a big budget romantic drama. It was released in early August to much controversy. I'm not entirely sure why, but Blake Lively, who stars in this film, famously married to Ryan Reynolds, a Hollywood couple that have always felt to me like Hollywood darlings, seemed to get a lot of flack. The film was also criticized, I think, for selling itself as a romantic drama, but really being about domestic abuse. And I think this is fundamentally a wrong headed criticism. I started watching the film with as much of an open mind as I could have, and I think it helped that I was watching it away from that hype. And I have to say, I was pretty impressed. The film is directed by and stars Justin Baldoni, and it's based on apparently a very well selling book by Colleen Hoover. And as I said, the real star of the show is very much Blake Lively, and she plays a florist called Lily Bloom, a very on point name, who falls for a surgeon played by Justin Baldoni called Ryle Kincaid. And it really is a love story at the start. You can definitely see the sexual attraction. He very much bowls her off her feet. It's only as they get married and as he discovers that she had a childhood sweetheart called Atlas, again, ludicrous name, played by Brandon Sklenar, who, if you watched the Yellowstone adjacent miniseries 1923, you'll be familiar with his work. So when the husband discovers that there is this old love in the neighborhood, he starts to get very jealous. And you discover that he is incredibly controlling and physical. But what's fascinating is that the way that the film shows this is you're not really sure what's happening at first. It's filmed in a quite ambiguous way. So they have a fight, the husband and wife, at the top of a staircase, at which point Lily Bloom ends up falling down the staircase and hurting herself pretty seriously. And at the time, you think maybe she tripped and fell. It's only later that it's revealed that this was a deliberate push. And similarly, there's a slap that comes. You think he's burnt his hand on the oven and it's just a reflex action. Again, it's very ambiguous until you get through the film. So I really like that. I like the fact that it's ambiguous. And a bit like Blake Lively's character, you're left questioning yourself and being gaslit. For those who've criticized this for being dressed up as a romantic drama, I think that's how domestic abuse works. Women don't stay in these relationships because the guy is not charismatic and loving and wonderful at the time that you meet these people. And indeed, even in the immediate aftermath of being hit, you can be told, I love you, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, I'll change. Right? So I think this is actually the appropriate way to cast these relationships, which is as something that really messes with your mind. These women are being, and indeed men, if it applies to men, these victims are being hugely manipulated emotionally. And so I think it actually gets it really right. And very sadly, in my own life, I've been around domestic abuse and I've seen how the victims of it get to a point where they're almost tiptoeing around the abuser and appeasing them. You see Blake Lively's character do this. I actually think it's a really strong performance from her. And I think she doesn't get the credit she deserves for being actually a pretty decent actor. But, you know, the way she knows he's about to go off, the way she tries to appease him verbally, it really rang true for me. Indeed, the only thing that didn't ring true for me is how quickly she leaves him, how quickly she just brutally cuts him off and says, right, I want a divorce. As we all know, very sadly, it takes victims of domestic violence typically several attempts to get up the courage, the financial security, the emotional security to be able to leave. So, to some extent, I think what's unbelievable about this film is how quickly she puts a stop to it after a matter of months rather than years. So overall, I think It Ends With Us deserves more credit maybe than it's getting. I mean, I think it did do very well at the box office. So what am I saying? It's based on a very popular book. But I think Blake Lively deserves more credit than she's getting. I think it's a subtler film. And for those looking for those moments of lightness, it's always an absolute pleasure to see Jenny Slate on screen. Here she plays the best friend and sister-in-law of the Blake Lively character, a very rich woman who's working in the florist shop just to keep her from being bored. She's called Alyssa in the film. And she's absolutely delightful, as is her husband, played by Hassan Minhaj, who's a sort of tech entrepreneur who's made some money. Kind of interesting to see Hassan Minhaj back on screen. Is he being rehabilitated after the sort of plagiarism and manipulation of the truth scandal that he was in? I hope so, because I really like Hassan Minhaj. I think he's talented. I think he deserves another go round. So overall, I would say not too enthusiastic thumbs up for It Ends With Us, but I was pleasantly surprised at how good this film was, how moving it was. I find Blake Lively to be a very charismatic and delightful presence on screen, and I hope she does more. It Ends With Us is rated PG-13. It has a running time of 130 minutes, and it's now available to stream. Okay, so my next film is Between the Temples. This is an R-rated comedy. It's 111 minutes runtime. It was also released earlier in the year. It played all the festivals, Sundance, Tribeca, Berlin, and it is available to rent and own. It is written and directed by Nathan Silver and stars Jason Schwartzman and Carol Kane. Jason Schwartzman will be known to those of you who love art house films for Rushmore, for Sofia Coppola's Marie Antoinette. Carol Kane, what an iconic, legendary comedienne. Probably best known to our generation for her cameo in The Princess Bride. But what an absolutely wonderful presence. And lovely to see her back on screen. And the setup for this romantic drama is that Jason Schwartzman is a bereaved man. He's near suicidal. He's also the cantor in his local synagogue. And he's really in despair. And through a chance encounter, he reconnects with a teacher who taught him music when he was a child. And that should tell you that Carol Kane is much older than him. In fact, in real life, she is 72 and he is 44. And they start up a friendship that develops into something more. It's intimate. It's chaste but intimate, if that makes sense. And I think it's surprising to both of them. I get the feeling that he's more open to it and clinging onto it as his path out of depression. I think she is more concerned and more. I think she's enjoying it while it's secret, but has more doubts about what it really can be and what it really can mean, so she's more withholding. And the result is a really wonderful romantic drama that I think speaks to some. It feels so authentic. I mean, partly it's shot on Super 16, which gives it a very sort of grainy home movie kind of feel. I don't think you actually needed that. I think the content grounds us in that way anyway. I really enjoyed it. I did feel it was a little bit long, actually. I felt it sagged in the middle. It's 111 minutes. Probably could have been 15 minutes shorter, but really wonderful. And the kind of sort of grown up drama that really examines relationships that you should want. It is funny, but I think it's more gently funny, more wryly funny. I don't think it's a sort of laugh out loud, ha 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 film. But I think when it works, it really works, and it's doing something quite unique, and would make actually a very good companion piece to Nobody Wants This. And kind of funny that I saw both of them in the same week. So Nobody Wants This, the Netflix romantic comedy starring Kristen Bell, that is all about a shiksa dating a rabbi. So all about relationships that are or are not deemed acceptable by society, and what that means for the couple involved. So a really delightful film. I really hope that you try and ferret it out and give it a chance. Third on the list is a documentary called Will and Harper that was released on Netflix last Friday. It's rated R and it's got a running time of 114 minutes, and I think it needs every one of those minutes in contrast to Between the Temples. It's directed by Josh Greenbaum and it stars the real life comedian, movie star Will Ferrell, and the person who he has worked with for many, many decades as a writer, as a fellow comedian, who now goes by Harper Steele. So the film is really about what do you do as a grown person, as an adult, when one of your best friends tells you that they are trans? And how do you become an ally? And how do you understand their experience? How do you ask your questions in a way that is not offensive, in a way that doesn't make that friend feel uncomfortable? And how do you recalibrate your friendship when everything you did before now has to be cast through a different and gendered lens? And I have to say, the resulting film is just so, oh, it's so human. It's so insightful. It is so eye-opening. I really personally valued it very highly because we're going through the same thing at the moment with a friend who has come out as trans. And as an adult, maybe without the vocabulary and the experience, it really gives you an insight in how to be and not be someone who can be an ally. And what's really wonderful is that Harper is so open and courageous in showing that journey. And it literally is a journey. So, what they decide to do is that Will Ferrell and Harper Steele decide to go on a road trip from East to West Coast. And this is obviously going to take them into some very happy and supportive places. Like if you're in New York and if you're with your former castmates from Saturday Night Live, and they're being funny, they're being supportive, they're being classic East Coast liberals. It's all great, it's all good. But then you're also going to go through the interior of America and you're going to go through red states, which maybe are not as supportive places. And what's fascinating is seeing the contrast between when your prejudices are overturned and when they're confirmed. So, to give you an example, there's a moment where Harper and Will go to a kind of, it's not even like a NASCAR race. I think it's just sort of some kind of modified truck racing. It's not massively big. And, Harper presents, she's dressing as a woman, but she's presenting kind of halfway. Like you can tell it's someone who was born and went through puberty as a man who's now choosing to present as a woman. So her appearance does cause note, and people do address her as bro or sir. So they go to this place, it's outdoors, and you can tell they're tense. They're both tense about how she's going to be received. And actually, this family that they're chatting to are just really pleasant and say, the dad says, but you should still come if you love this stuff. You should still come. It's going to be fine. And I almost had tears in my eyes. It was just so lovely. But then you get into another situation where it goes the other way, where because Will Ferrell can't help but being Will Ferrell. And I think he wants to, out of best intentions, maybe take the attention off Harper. So he decides to do this steak eating contest. And he dresses up as Sherlock Holmes to do it. And pretty soon, this whole packed restaurant is kind of taking photos of him and videos of him. And you can just feel the atmosphere go south. Like these people, it just becomes hostile. And it's not as if they say anything about Harper or the reason of the journey. You can just see people looking at her appearance, making judgments. And then the next day, you're going to see all the social media hatred. And he was trying to be an ally, and it just, by drawing that attention, it just went south. And I think it shows the reality of what it must be to walk as a trans woman through some of those communities and the kind of hostility you're going to get. So that was incredibly upsetting to watch, really upsetting, actually. So I think it's a powerful film. I think it's a really necessary film. And, I think it just allows us to explore some of those issues that make us all uncomfortable. Like, am I allowed to ask this? Am I allowed to ask that? Some of the most relatable pieces were when they both are in a swimming pool at a hotel, a motel. Harper says, I feel a bit uncomfortable in this swimsuit. I wish it fitted better, but that's probably how all women feel at this age. And I was like, absolutely. How many women, whether born natally or trans, are just uncomfortable in their bodies and don't feel they quite live up to societal expectations, especially as you get older. So I think this is a really moving film. I found it so insightful, and I really hope you give it a chance. It's by turns hilarious and moving and scary, which I suppose is what the experience of Harper Steele must be right now. And I think and praise both of them for getting this film made. Because it's Will Ferrell, this will get views, and I hope it really helps people with their own conversations and their own allyship. So with that, I hope you get to check out these films. I hope you're enjoying watching The Substance, which I reviewed a few weeks ago, and really enjoying that. And stay tuned for a deep dive into Industry Season 3 on the next episode. Thank you for listening.